And I remember my heart was pounding, my voice was like wavering, so I was obviously like going through a real emotional period. And I just had the conversation and I got straight through to the business owner of this supplier. I explained our model and what we were going to do. And he said, yeah, absolutely, we'd love to work with you. I think that would be really good. And I just couldn't believe it. When I got out, I just thought it was almost like she was looking down on me and saying like, this is the right step to be making. Because
so with that in mind, we've got the store built now at this point. So is that now the point where we're going to go and talk to suppliers?
Yeah, generally that would be the time where we would approach suppliers. And there's a whole process around this. There are scripts that we've perfected for the UK market that are all available inside the Dropship Unlocked program on how to actually approach and convince these suppliers to work with us. But ultimately, the way that we position it is that they need us, right? We're doing them a favor because without us, they wouldn't really have a route to market. The suppliers that we approach typically aren't selling items directly on their own websites, if they even have websites, to customers. So their route to market is through retailers like us. We come in to ensure that we take on some of that customer service support that their customers are looking for, but also ensuring that we generate them additional revenue streams that they don't have already and expand their market reach. So the initial way I'd advise contacting suppliers, if you can, is by phone. And actually in person is sometimes even better, but by phone I think is the best way, because if you have to email them and there's no way of getting them on the phone, then that can be a good third option. But really the phone call is the way that you can show that you're a real person, because they must get approached by so many time wasters and people that are not serious and are going to tarnish their brand's reputation and just want to take their products and throw them up on eBay and put a like discounted price on them. And you can imagine, as a supplier, as a brand, you wouldn't want to work with a retailer who had those short-term goals for just making a bit of money at the expense of your brand's reputation. So it's understandable. So we just have to show them we're good people, we want to do well in business, we want to make you do well in business, and we want to have happy customers that want to continue to buy from us for years to come. We're here for the long run and we're going to become the experts in our market. So when you first call suppliers, I remember having to balance this with having my job at the time. And I had this supplier that I wanted to call. I think it was my first ever supplier that I wanted to sign. And on my lunch break at work, I popped out and sat in my car in the car park at work. And I made a call to my first supplier. And I remember I was really nervous, because you've never done this at this point, right? So it's almost like a shift in your own identity. You don't yet identify as a business owner, as a director. So it's quite difficult to put that hat on and build up the confidence to call them. But I did it. I had a chat and I just thought, look, I'm going to help this company out eventually. So it's in their interest to work with me. And they did. They signed. And I remember going back into work and just thinking, wow, that's the first step. I've made it. I'm now a legitimate business owner with a supplier whose products I can sell. And that was really cool. And I haven't ever talked about this one, but this was it was either like the second or third supplier that I signed. And this was quite a sentimental moment for me and something I think back on now. It was at the time, it was a really difficult year for me. My grandmother had just passed away. And I remember a few days before she passed away, we sat and had this like 3-hour conversation one afternoon. And we really, I was just talking to her about things and what my plans were and the business and stuff. And just like, we were just chatting. She showed genuine interest in what I was doing. And I just remember telling her all of these plans, and we were going to sign suppliers and we were going to launch this cool business, and it was all online. And I think she kind of half understood what I was referring to, but maybe half was just humoring me. And anyway, she passed away in the coming days. And a few days later, my parents were in her house and they were clearing out all of her belongings, going through that difficult process, of taking, like tidying up the house and everything ready for it to be sold or whatever. And I just remember thinking, well, I've got this supplier that I want to sign. It's obviously a really sad day. I'm not being much use here because there's being like sofas being carried past me and, stuff moving around, and you're just in that kind of like weird emotional state where you're really sad and down. But I also wanted to make her proud. I wanted to do something that I thought, I've told her about this. She was excited about this and I want to see it through to completion. So I went outside, sat in my car again, and I just thought, I'm going to call this supplier, who were quite a big one in my industry, and just speak to them and see if I can sign them. And I remember my heart was pounding, my voice was like wavering. So I was obviously like going through a real emotional period. And I just had the conversation and I got straight through to the business owner of this supplier. I explained our model and what we were going to do. And he said, yeah, absolutely, we'd love to work with you. I think that would be really good. And I just couldn't believe it. When I got out, I just thought it was almost like she was looking down on me and saying, like, this is the right step to be making. Because looking back now, that supplier and the 2 that I signed around that week have literally generated us millions of pounds in sales since doing that back in whenever it was, 5-6 years ago. So having that ability to just step up to the plate when it really matters, whatever your inspiration is, whatever your motivation is, have that belief that you are worth it. You are the business owner. You are the person that deserves this. Make that call, step up to the plate. And I promise you, in years from now, you'll look back and think, I'm so grateful that I did that and took that first step.
Wow, what a great story. I think as well, you were able to pull strength out of such a difficult position that's then paid you back for years to come. So, it's an inspirational story. And I'm sure, I know I've had a loss recently in my family as well, my grandpa passing away. And then you have this feeling as well when you go into a business that it's so uncomfortable, but you want to make people proud of you. And I think you probably had that around in your family as well. And that's that strength that we can pull from these difficult experiences to go on and go and achieve our goals is amazing. And obviously you've harnessed that and made an important call that day. And when you do first call suppliers on this point as well, it is really quite scary when you first pick up the phone and speak to a supplier and you're not confident with speaking with them on the phone. But if you can tap into what's really important and how calling this supplier is a means to an end for your big goals at the end, then it just becomes a no-brainer that you'll pick up the phone, you'll speak to the supplier, you'll get them signed, and then you can reap the rewards for months and years to come. So my own personal experience of signing suppliers was obviously phone calls are the way that we always advise. So it was always a phone call. I get them signed up. And I set out a week where I took a week off work and I knew that I was going to be signing suppliers all week. And that was my absolute chief aim for the week. And for me, this moment I remember clearly was after I put the phone down on any supplier that I just signed on the phone, I had this moment where I put the phone down on the desk and I would just silently cheer to myself. And I had a real celebration for myself after I signed each one. And I remember looking down at my dog who was sat in the same room as me while I was on this phone, looking up at me thinking I was absolutely crazy. Because I was, almost jumping around, cheering, because I'd signed these suppliers, because it's such a huge moment. And it's where, as we go through this process, this really starts to feel real now. It's really exciting. We've got suppliers on board. Other people, other than yourself and your immediate family, know that you've started a business, know that it's real. And then you can get these live products onto your store and start selling.